Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of 1998 Represent. In this episode, we're taking a look at the Seinfeld finale. Let me get my notes here. I remember anxiously awaiting this finale. Like, it was very hyped up. It was, like, super secretive about what was going to happen with it. And I think a lot of people ended up being disappointed by it. So I'm going to bring my notes up here. So it first premiered May 14th, 1998. It was watched by about 76 million people. The total time for it is about 56 minutes, and I think that translated to about an hour and 15 minutes for its original runtime. Like, if you, I think that's including the commercials. Because when I rewatched it on Netflix, and it was about 56 minutes without commercials. So I'm thinking that extra, what is it, about 15, like 20 minutes is probably the amount of time that they were using for commercial breaks. So Larry David had left the show, I think, in the seventh season, and he had came back to help write the finale. So went away, wrote the finale, and then basically, let's see, he came back and wrote the finale. From what I remember reading, during the first table read or the table read, they had a bunch of scripts. They all read their script. They kept one script and they destroyed the rest of the scripts. And this is kind of where it leads into how secretive they were about the kind of like what was going to happen in this finale, like, and anything like that. So they just wanted to make sure there was like no leaks. I don't know if anything like that could be prevented now because like obviously the internet was still a thing in 1998, but social media wasn't a thing, and it was probably even if it did get leaked online, probably like less people would have seen it, if you know what I mean, because like not everybody in the world was online at that point. Let's see. So all the scripts were destroyed. I remember reading that commercial breaks or commercial spots in this show for this particular finale were $1 million for a 30-second spot, and that is basically like Super Bowl level, or back then, amount that you would pay for advertising. And it was the first time, I think, outside of sporting events that advertising was that expensive for a 30-second spot. So this finale, like, a lot of people were going to watch it, and a lot of people did watch it. Like I said, it was disappointing to a degree. We'll get into that a little bit later in the video. I remember reading, let me bring up the notes here about what Larry David said about it, because here we are. Larry David essentially said he had no regrets about how it ended initially in 2010. I think they did like a Seinfeld mini finale on Curb Your Enthusiasm, and then there was a thing that says it was. He said it was good, but then he said in 2007 he said if they were to redo it, he would have kept the plot of the finale less secretive because it just kind of heightened the expectations about like the whole thing. The thing was so secret that it's got to be like the best thing ever, right? So like it was so secret that I think kind of like whatever they did was probably going to still be disappointing. I remember it was just incredibly hyped up. Everybody at school. This came out this would have come out the end of my junior year of high school, and I remember watching it. Like everybody, there's a joke in the movie, not the movie, in the episode, because I recently rewatched it on Netflix about George and Jerry they had pitched a sitcom to, I think it was NBC, pitched a sitcom to them, and like years earlier, and then eventually they want to pick it up, and George and Jerry are meeting these NBC executives in this office, and they're like, oh, we want a thing that's like a water cooler thing, and George is like, well, do people really gather around water coolers anymore? Like, it should be like more like a coffee thing or something like that. And just going back to the whole thing about water coolers is like, I know it's like a metaphor for people gathering and just kind of talking about the thing that happened the night before. But I remember, I forget what night that of the year this would have been, because let me see, May 14th, 1998. Let me see if I could just Google that really fast. May 14th, 1998. Let's see if it tells you what day of the week it was. Does it tell you what day of the week it is? What happened on that day of the week? Seinfeld finale, so that came out. Day of the week. What day of the week was May 14th, 1998? 14th was Thursday. So yeah, so it came out on a Thursday night. And then, like Friday, the next day at school, like everybody was talking about it. and I think a lot of people were disappointed by it. I mean, when I rewatched it just now, it's okay. It's not amazing. I did like that they brought back a lot of the. It kind of became a clip show toward like the second half because it was like these are some of the best moments. They brought back like the low talker. They brought back Soup Nazi. They brought back like the Bubble Boy and the whole thing with the boops and all that. So they brought back a lot of the characters that these four characters had kind of wronged in the past to kind of like explain how terrible these people are. So we'll get into the plot of the thing. So, like I mentioned earlier, George and Jerry get contacted by NBC to premiere or to do their show. They're going to move out to California. That's kind of the plot. NBC lets them use their private jet, so they all decide they want to go to Paris. They're on the jet, and I think Kramer had just come back from the beach because he's constantly hopping on the plane, going like this, or is it doesn't matter. But he's got water in his ear, and basically him hopping on the plane causes it to almost crash, basically. So they land in, I think it's Latham, Massachusetts. They land there to fix the plane. The four of them go into town. They see a guy getting carjacked. They don't do anything to help the guy. They're kind of mocking him as well. And then they get arrested for a Good Samaritan law violation of them not even attempting to help this guy who gets carjacked. So they're in jail at this point, and it goes into a full-blown trial. Like, I remember, like, there's, like, Geraldo Rivera's, like, covering it from, like, a studio, and they have, like, the whole town kind of gets taken over by people that want to go watch this trial, obviously. Family members and friends of these characters, people that they knew, you know, like, people that were characters from, you know, like, past episodes. And then a lot of other characters get brought back in to kind of talk about just how terrible these people are. Like, there's the lady who got sold a defective wheelchair by Kramer. They have a lady that's recounting what happened in the contest. There's the Soup Nazi, one of the best bits on that show. They brought him back. They brought back Low Talker. They brought back the Bubble Boy. I'm trying to think of who else came back in that was there. But it was like a bunch of characters from the past. It kind of became like a clip show. But also, it's kind of a weird. This is like a weird show to do a finale for, because like the whole premise is it's a show about nothing. So how do you really do a finale about that necessarily? One joke I thought was really funny, and it was kind of they played it out. I think in three parts. Like, I don't know. There's like a rule of threes in comedy or something like that. So Elaine makes a cell phone call to one of her friends whose dad's in the hospital or something. And the funny thing is, like, they're like, you're making that call on a cell phone? Like, that's, like, really disrespectful. And this, thinking forward now, 25 years later, he's like, yeah, you should make that call on a landline. And, like, everybody, like, most people I know now don't even have landlines. So it's just kind of funny that she makes this call on a cell phone, and she kind of gets berated by Jerry and George over that. And then she makes a call later, and then she basically has Jerry ends up calling her at the same time, so she has to take that call separately. And then at the third bit, she's like, well, to make up for the cell phone call and like prematurely ending the call earlier, if I call her using my prison call, that should make up for all of like the other faux pas, I guess, as George calls it, a faux pas of calling on like a cell phone or what have you. But that was kind of like a funny bit, I thought. But overall, I remember when I watched it in 1998. I think it was probably just overhyped. I think kind of had it not been hyped up so much, it probably wouldn't end up being as disappointing because, like, you know, like it was so secretive that this is like the biggest finale ever. Let me bring up my notes again because there was like an interesting factoid I remember reading about it. There's a really cool picture. I'll link it in the description. There is a really cool picture of Times Square from this night on Reddit, where it's people that are actually like watching the finale in Times Square. Like, you don't see that anymore because everybody's just gonna watch it at home or like what have you. But that's really cool. If I remember reading, there's only 3 shows. I think there's only 3 currently that ended their run at number 1. So when they had their final episode, their show was the number 1 rated show in like the country. And those 3 shows are the Andy Griffith Show, I Love Lucy, and Seinfeld. I don't know if any other shows have kind of gone past that, but that's kind of like a pretty big accomplishment because those two, like Seinfeld is the most recent one on there, and that was obviously 25 years ago. But the other ones, Andy Griffith and I Love Lucy, are even older than that. So it's kind of like a pretty big accomplishment to kind of end your final season still being number one. So that was just like cool little fact I found out about that. But overall, I think the kind of it's weird because the it was so overhyped, but also I think if you take the hype away from it, it's not a bad episode, but it was definitely not as good as it probably could have been. But also just so much hype around it made it kind of be like whatever they did was probably still going to come across as disappointing. Because I remember like this is not related to Seinfeld. This is more related to wrestling, where you're watching a match and it's like a really important match or match where and then it just like abruptly ends. Not really abruptly ends, but it just the ending isn't like the match was so good up to that point, and then the ending kind of ruins the match. That's what I can kind of describe watching the finale like, or watching this episode was like back in 1998. It was just kind of like, that's it, it's over. That kind of feeling of like, it wasn't terrible, but it was like just kind of like, all right, I guess that's it, kind of thing. And I get that feeling a lot, kind of like when I would watch wrestling and the match would just end, and you're just like, okay, that's it, whatever. But it is on Netflix if you want to check it out. Again, I'll link in the description for that picture because it's a really cool picture of Times Square in 1998. But that is going to do it for this episode. Like I said, Seinfeld is streaming on Netflix if you want to watch it, so I would definitely recommend watching it because it's still a great show. It didn't have a great finale, but it's still an amazing show. Because I definitely remember like watching that. I think it was on Fox at one time because it was like probably in syndication at that time. But it was like Married with Children and then Seinfeld. So it was just like a really cool. Like I would usually like watch it while having dinner. That was like back in like 1995 or 1996 or something like that. But anyway, that's going to do it for this episode. We'll be back again in a few days with another video. Probably going to be doing a music album. I'll have to pick what album that is, but I have some ideas, so we'll see how that goes. Again, that's going to do it for now. Remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe. We'll see you again next time. Take care and have a good one. See ya.